Tonight, while you lie there listening in the dark, I want to tell you about Mina Nakamura, a 24-year-old night shift operator in Tokyo. By day she is almost invisible, just another quiet face on the train. By night, alone in a tiny top-floor apartment of an old building, she watches other people sleep through glowing security screens. Her job seems simple to her friends: watch, log, and ignore the strange noises in her own ceiling. But there is a room that should not exist, and it has been watching her back. Mina lives in room 303 of Hoshikawa Apartments, a narrow concrete building pressed between taller towers. Her room is barely wider than her outstretched arms, with a futon, a single narrow closet, and a low table crowded with a laptop, headphones, and cold tea. While most people sleep, she logs into a remote security system and watches live feeds from other apartment blocks scattered around the city. Have you ever stayed awake just to watch other people live, while your own life waited politely in the dark corners? On her first week of nights, Mina read an article about a man who died alone in a small Tokyo apartment a few stations away. No one noticed for months. The television was still on when they found him, murmuring to a room full of dust, while his mail piled up outside his door. Since then, Mina likes to think of herself as a thin thread of awareness in the city, a quiet pair of eyes making sure no one simply disappears. She does not yet realize that some doors are closed very deliberately. Around 2 in the morning, when the trains stop and the city exhales, Hoshikawa Apartments become very quiet. The vending machine downstairs hums, a pipe clicks in the wall, and somewhere a television whispers through plaster. Mina stretches, takes off her headphones for a moment, and hears footsteps above her. Slow, steady, pacing from one end of the ceiling to the other. It is irritating but familiar. The only problem is that Mina lives on the top floor. There is nothing above her except the roof. She tells herself it must be pipes, or the metal of the building cooling. She puts the headphones back on, letting the low hiss of the security feeds cover the sounds overhead. On the laptop screen, grids of tiny windows show stairwells, bicycle racks, laundry rooms, and narrow corridors from buildings with names she has never visited. Tonight she is responsible for a place called Midori-so, an older apartment block with 3 floors and peeling green paint. At least the floor plan says it has 3 floors. An alert window blinks open in the corner of her screen, a soft chime cutting through the static. Door sensor triggered, it reads, Midori-so, room 403 door opened after midnight curfew. Mina blinks, leans closer, and scrolls through the digital floor plan. First floor, second floor, third floor. Rooms 101 to 303. There is no 403 on the diagram. She refreshes the page. The alert does not vanish. Have you ever seen something small that simply should not be there, and felt your body understand before your mind does? Mina opens the building records, the old scanned documents that most operators ignore. Midori-so was renovated 10 years ago. Before that, the top floor had been extended with an extra unit, room 403, later sealed during repairs. The notes do not say why. The blueprint simply shows a small rectangle above the corridor, marked in red pen and crossed out. She scrolls back to the live feeds, but there is no camera for that part of the hallway. No door, no sensor, and yet something insists that 403 has opened. She logs the alert as a probable sensor error and moves on. But a faint sound begins to creep into her headphones, under the usual murmur of the cameras. It is the thin whisper of an old television, that soft, snowy buzz from late-night variety shows and commercials repeated beyond meaning. Mina turns up the volume on one feed and down on another, trying to isolate it, but the sound is everywhere and nowhere. It is exactly like the news story about the man who died with his television on. At 2:30, another alert appears. Motion detected. Midoriso third floor corridor. Mina clicks the feed. The camera is mounted high, looking down a narrow hallway with 4 identical doors. She watches the loop of fluorescent light and cheap wallpaper for a full minute before something new appears. A 5th door is suddenly there in the frame, squeezed at the far end, number plate catching the light. Room 403. Mina gasps softly, then rewinds the footage. In the previous minute, the wall is blank, and then the door is not. She prints a screenshot, just to be sure she is not imagining it. The cheap printer beside her wheezes and spits out a warm sheet of paper. The corridor is there in faint grayscale, 4 doors and fluorescent glare. The far wall is perfectly blank. No door, no number plate, only patterned wallpaper. Mina feels something tighten at the base of her skull. She looks back at the live feed. Room 403 still stands at the end of the hallway, very patient and very still. Her phone begins to buzz on the table. Not the work soft phone icon on the laptop, but her personal smartphone, the one few people know. The caller ID is strange. An internal building extension, 3 digits and the name Midoriso below it. She hesitates, then answers. On the other end there is only the sound of television static, the same thin whisper that fills her headphones. Mina speaks softly into the darkness of her room, asking who is there. The static pauses, as if someone has turned their head. Then beneath the static, she hears breathing. Slow, ragged, very close to the microphone. It is not quite male and not quite female, just the tired breathing of someone who has stayed up too long. Mina whispers, asking if they need help, if they are in danger. There is a soft tapping sound, like a finger against plastic, and when she glances at her work console, she sees the active call indicator flashing next to one number. 403. If your phone rang from a room that does not exist, would you stay on the line? The call drops without a click. For a moment the room feels too quiet, like all the sound has stepped back to watch. Mina shakes her head and contacts the building manager listed in the system, a man named Takeda. He answers with a sleepy voice and insists that Midoriso has only 3 floors. No, there is no room 403, not anymore, he says, and then he changes the subject. His tone has the sharp politeness of someone refusing to remember something. Mina logs the conversation, but her fingers tremble slightly on the keys. The footsteps above her start again, almost immediately after she ends the call. This time they are slower, like someone pacing out the dimensions of a very small room. Mina looks up and notices something new. A bloom of dampness has appeared on the ceiling near the corner, a pale stain the size of her hand. To her half-sleeping mind, it looks like a tiny floor plan, a rectangle with darker smudges where doors might be. Her breath fogs the cold air, and for the first time she feels truly not alone. In the morning, after her shift, Mina stops on the 2nd floor to chat with Mrs. Sato from 203, a small woman with a soft perm and an endless supply of gossip. When Mina mentions the footsteps above her room, Mrs. Sato falls strangely quiet. After a long pause, she says that before the renovations, there used to be a little rooftop unit above 303. A man lived there who never spoke to anyone. One summer, a smell began to leak down the stairwell, and after that, the room was sealed. Mrs. Sato lowers her voice, as if the empty air might overhear. She remembers that the man upstairs kept his television on day and night. The building manager only went up after neighbors complained about constant static buzzing through the ceiling. When they forced the door, the screen was still glowing, she says, and there was a mark on the wall behind his chair where his head had rested for too long. Mina feels a chill and realizes that the story she read in the news was not somewhere nearby. It was here. That night when Mina logs in for her shift, the system is waiting for her. A red notification pulses at the top of the console. Manual override required, it says. Midori-so room 403 door lock offline. There is no lock to control in the hardware list, only a blank entry with a flickering code. For some reason, she hovers her mouse over the confirm button. Her fingers feel heavy, as if someone else is gently guiding them down. She clicks. Somewhere, a door that should not exist is officially unlocked. On the corridor feed, the fifth door at the end of Midori-so's third floor swings inward very slowly. The camera catches only a narrow slice of darkness beyond the frame, but inside that darkness, she thinks she sees the edge of a small room. A cluttered low table, a futon pushed against the wall, the blue glow of a television screen. It looks uncomfortably familiar. Mina leans closer until her own reflection swims faintly on the laptop surface, as if there is another camera behind her, watching both screens. She pauses the feed and magnifies the still image. On the inside wall of room 403, just above the table, hangs a calendar. The picture is faded, some forgotten countryside scene. The date is visible, marked in small black letters. July 10 years ago. The calendar page has never been turned. As she zooms in, the image begins to pixelate into blocks of color, but the numbers will not blur. They remain sharp, insisting that the door she just opened leads directly into another year that never finished closing. Mina scrolls back through archived clips out of habit. In a recording from the night the room was sealed 10 years ago, the corridor looks almost the same, only grainier. The door of 403 is open then too, and someone passes by the camera, just a blurred figure in a school uniform hurrying down the stairs. When she freezes the frame, the blur sharpens just enough to show black hair with messy bangs, a slight tilt of the head she recognizes very well. It looks exactly like a younger version of herself. She sits back, heart beating slowly but heavily, like a fist against a door. Had she ever visited Midori-so as a student, the name does not ring a bell. Maybe it is just a trick of light, she tells herself, the way we see our own faces in strangers on trains. Still, the ceiling stain above her seems darker now, and the footsteps have stopped completely, as if whoever was pacing has finally decided on a direction. Mina needs air. She decides to go up to the rooftop. The rooftop is flat and cold, edged by a low railing. Antennas and cables cast thin shadows against the night sky. From here, Mina can see other apartment blocks with identical windows, glowing rectangles stacked like offerings to sleepless gods. She walks slowly, listening for any hint of movement above her own room. There is only the faint rumble of distant traffic. Near the middle of the roof, she notices a square of metal she has never seen before, a hatch plate bolted to the concrete. The number stamped on it is 403. The bolts around the hatch are rusted, but the handle in the center looks strangely clean, as if someone has touched it recently. Mina crouches and places her fingers on the cold metal. The instant she pulls, the city sounds thin out, like someone turning down the volume on the world. The hatch lifts only a little, but it is enough for a draft of chill air to rise up, carrying the faint odor of dust, old paper, and that unmistakable electric tang of a television that has been left on too long. From below the hatch comes the faint sound of a variety show theme song, the kind that played endlessly 10 summers ago when she was still in school. The melody is familiar enough that a younger version of her begins humming along in memory. She hears a chair creak, as if someone is shifting their weight toward the sound of the open hatch. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. When she checks it, there is a new message from an unknown number. 2 words, thank you. Beneath the text is an attached photo. It shows Hashikawa apartments from the street, taken long before Mina moved in. In the picture, the building has 4 floors instead of 3. The top floor has a single narrow window set back under the roofline, a weak blue light behind the glass. The photo should make her feel dizzy, but instead, she feels a strange calm, like finally remembering where she left something. She closes the hatch gently, as if not to wake whoever is still sitting in that upstairs room. When she heads back down the stairs, something about the building feels taller. The stairwell between the second and third floors seems to stretch for an extra turn, an unfamiliar landing in the middle. Mina stops, one hand on the rail. There is a new corridor branching off that she has never seen before, its walls painted the same dull cream, its light slightly too dim. No sounds come from it, yet the air there feels occupied, as if it is waiting for the right person to step across its threshold. At the end of the corridor stands a single door, its paint a little more yellow than the others in the building. There is a metal plate beside the peephole, tarnished but readable. 403. The number seems smaller than on any other door sign, like it is trying not to draw attention. Mina takes a step closer and feels the weight of 10 summers settle on her shoulders. If you were in her place, would you knock first, or would you pretend you had not seen the door at all? She does not knock. Instead, she crouches and peers through the narrow mail slot beneath the handle. On the other side, she sees a small, dimly lit room. A low table with an open laptop, cold noodles, scattered papers. A futon on the floor, unmade. The television in the corner glows with silent static, washing the walls in shifting light. Sitting on the floor back to the door is a slim figure in an oversized hoodie, hair falling in messy bangs. The silhouette looks exactly like her, down to the angle of the shoulders. Her phone vibrates again, but this time the sound does not come from her pocket. It comes from inside the room. On the low table by the laptop, a phone screen lights up with an incoming call. The caller ID shows her own name, Mina Nakamura, as if she is calling herself from outside the door. The seated figure tilts its head, listening, and then slowly reaches toward the ringing phone. Mina jerks back from the mail slot and finds herself suddenly in her own apartment again, sitting in front of her laptop. On her laptop, a new window has opened without her touch. It is a live feed from a camera that does not belong to any building she monitors. The label at the top simply reads Room 403. The picture shows the same cramped room she saw through the mail slot, from a high-ceiling corner. The hooded figure sits on the floor, facing the television, head slightly bowed. From this angle, the face is hidden, but the posture is familiar from every reflection she has ever avoided meeting in a dark screen. After a few seconds, the figure on the screen begins to move its lips, as if speaking softly to someone sitting just behind the camera. The system's auto-transcription box at the bottom starts to fill with text. It is not a language she recognizes at first, just broken phrases, until she realizes they are in simple, slow Japanese. The figure is telling a story, in a calm, tired voice. A story about a girl named Mina, who watches people through cameras at night, and hears footsteps in a ceiling that should be empty. The words keep arriving, a few seconds behind the movement of the figure's mouth, describing exactly what has already happened tonight. The alert from Midoriso, the impossible door, the footsteps overhead. Then the transcription shifts. Now the figure is speaking in the present, about someone else entirely. A second presence is mentioned, someone listening very far away, lying in the dark with their eyes closed, hearing this story through a device on their pillow. The figure in 403 calls that distant person the listener. Mina realizes they are talking about you. Her console status panel shows 3 active connections now. One is the operator, identified as Mina. One is the room itself, 403. The third is labeled only as listener. The system lists a time zone that does not match Japan, a faint ghost of another night somewhere else. Mina speaks softly into her headset, even though this is not how the software works. She thanks you for staying with her through the story so far, and apologizes for the way the room has reached across to touch whatever device you are holding. On the feed from 403, a shadow appears in the far corner of the room, just at the edge of the static glow. It does not belong to furniture or wiring or the seated figure. It is shaped instead like someone standing very still, facing the wall. The outline is blurry and unfinished, as if it is waiting for details to be filled in. Mina has the uncomfortable sense that those missing details belong to you, that the room is sketching a place for you to sit the next time you cannot sleep. The ceiling stain above her has grown, branching out like a diagram of narrow corridors. If she stares too long, she can almost see room numbers in its darker patches. She imagines a map of all the forgotten spaces in the city, rooms sealed after lonely deaths, stairwells that go nowhere, elevators that skip certain floors. Room 403, she understands now, is just one of many. A waiting room for those who have been watched but never really seen. A place for people whose stories only finish when someone listens. Mina closes her laptop slowly, and the room falls into the soft blue dark of the city night. The television static fades to a memory, like the breathing of someone who has finally fallen asleep. She curls under her blanket and lets her eyes adjust to the shadows. Somewhere above her, beyond the concrete, someone is still sitting in a sealed room, watching an endless program from 10 summers ago. Somewhere very close to you, a quiet device glows in the dark, carrying their signal to your ear. Before she drifts off, Mina thinks of you again, the unseen listener whose presence made the room open a little wider tonight. She wonders if you have ever heard footsteps in a place that should be empty, or a television whispering through a wall with no neighbors. If after this, you hear a soft hiss of static when your own room is quiet, do not be afraid right away. It may only be 403 checking whether you are still there, still awake, still willing to listen until its story can end.